"I don't celebrate Christmas," he said, until an Apache woman showed him what sacred means. Cole Hartley was a man of the frontier, a man who lived by his own rules. His ranch sat deep in the desert, where the wind howled across the empty land and the stars burned bright at night. There was no one around for miles. That suited Cole just fine. He wasn't one for company, and Christmas was just another day to him, like all the others. No family to visit, no friends to share the day with, just the endless work of running his ranch. Christmas? It meant nothing to him. It had never meant anything to him. Cole had grown up with little to celebrate. His father had been a wanderer, a man who preferred the open plains to the comforts of home. Cole's mother had passed when he was young, leaving him with a father who didn't understand how to care for a boy. Holidays were just days of work, with no presents, no food to share, and no warmth. The world around him celebrated, but Cole had learned to shut it out. He found no joy in the season. Christmas meant nothing more than a reminder of the things he lacked: family, love, and connection. It was a cold December morning when the stranger arrived. Cole was in the middle of repairing the fence that ran along the perimeter of his land. His hands were rough and calloused from years of hard labor, and the wind cut through his worn coat like a knife. He had just finished nailing the last board in place when he heard the sound of hooves. At first he thought it was one of the neighboring ranchers coming to check on him, but as the rider came into view, he saw something that caught him off guard. A woman. A young Apache woman riding a horse as if the wind itself was carrying her. Her dark hair flowed behind her like a river of night, and her skin was the color of the earth, rich, warm, and beautiful. She rode with a quiet confidence, as if the land was her home and she knew it better than anyone. Cole stopped what he was doing and watched her approach. When she came closer, she raised her hand in greeting. "I'm Ayana," she said in a soft, clear voice. "I'm looking for shelter. I've heard there's a ranch nearby where I can rest for the night." His first instinct was to turn her away. He didn't like visitors, especially strangers. But there was something about her that made him pause. Her eyes, dark and filled with wisdom, seemed to see straight through him. She didn't ask for much, just a place to rest for the night. "Come in, then," Cole said reluctantly, nodding toward his cabin. "I'll give you a meal, but I don't celebrate Christmas." Ayana smiled, but there was no surprise in her eyes. It was as though she expected him to say that. "I didn't come for Christmas," she replied, dismounting from her horse. "I came for warmth." Cole led her inside, where a simple fire crackled in the hearth. The cabin was humble, just a small space with a bed, a table, and a few chairs. It was not much, but it was enough for one man who preferred to keep to himself. As Ayana settled by the fire, she spoke softly, her words measured. She didn't press Cole to talk, but he found himself drawn to her quiet presence. He had spent so many years alone, buried in his own thoughts, that even the sound of another person's voice felt strange. Yet, with her, it was different. There was no rush, no pressure. She simply existed, as though her presence was as natural as the earth beneath their feet. "You don't celebrate Christmas?" Ayana asked after a long silence. Cole looked at her, his brow furrowing. "No, never have. It's just another day. A day people used to sell things, to make money off others' goodwill. I've seen it all before." Ayana nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. "It's true, some people only think about gifts and decorations. But Christmas, in its heart, is more than that. It's a time to remember the blessings we have, and the ones who came before us." Cole was skeptical. "I don't need to remember anything. I've had to fend for myself since I was a boy." "Christmas is just a distraction?" Ayana's eyes softened. "Sometimes, Cole, we forget the sacred things in life. We let the world tell us what matters, instead of listening to what the land tells us." Cole looked away, uncomfortable with the direction the conversation was taking. He didn't want to talk about sacred things. Sacred had no place in his life. He had survived by being tough, by shutting out emotions and focusing on what was in front of him, fixing the fences, feeding the cattle, and making sure he didn't fall behind. That was enough. "Are you staying long?" he asked, trying to change the subject. Ayana smiled gently. "Just for tonight. Tomorrow I'll continue my journey. But before I go, I would like to invite you to join us for Christmas." Cole frowned. "Join you? Where?" "In my community," Ayana explained. "We gather every year to celebrate, to give thanks for the blessings of life. It's not about the things we buy. It's about honoring what is sacred." Cole shook his head. "I don't need your Christmas. I've got enough work to do here." Ayana didn't push. She simply nodded. I understand. But if you change your mind, the invitation is open. You are welcome. As the evening wore on, Cole found himself lost in thought. Ayana's words echoed in his mind, but he pushed them away. He didn't need Christmas, and he didn't need anyone else's idea of what it meant. But as he lay in his bed that night, staring at the ceiling, something inside him stirred. It was the first time in years that he had felt anything other than numbness. Ayana had brought something to life inside him, a curiosity, a question about what Christmas could really mean. He turned over, pulling his blankets tighter around him, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Ayana had seen something in him he hadn't seen in himself. The next morning, Cole awoke to the sound of Ayana already up and packing her things. The sun was still low in the sky, casting long shadows across the desert. It was early, too early for him to be moving, but Ayana seemed ready to face the day with calm energy. He sat up in his bed, rubbing his eyes, and watched her from across the room. She moved gracefully, as if every action was part of a quiet dance with the world around her. Her dark hair fell around her face in waves, and her eyes seemed to be searching the horizon, as though she could see something that he couldn't. You're up early, Cole said, his voice hoarse from sleep. Ayana turned to him with a soft smile. The morning is sacred to my people, she said. We wake early to give thanks to the land, to the animals, to the sun that rises each day. It's a part of the way we live. Cole rubbed his jaw. He had heard of such things, but never really understood them. I don't think I have much to be thankful for, he muttered. Ayana's smile didn't fade. That's the beauty of it, Cole. We give thanks, not because things are perfect, but because they are what they are. Life is a gift, even in its hardest moments. Cole didn't respond. He had never seen life that way. For him, every day was just about survival, but Ayana's words had settled in his mind, stirring something deep inside of him, something he hadn't felt in years. She finished packing her things and turned to him. I'll be leaving soon. But I want to remind you of my invitation. My people celebrate Christmas in a way that is different from what most know. If you change your mind, you're welcome to join us. Cole looked at her, his expression unreadable. He hadn't changed his mind, but there was something in her voice that made him hesitate. She wasn't asking for anything from him, only offering something, and that made him feel uneasy. I've never been one for ceremonies or traditions. They all seem, unnecessary to me. Ayana stepped closer, her presence calm and steady. That's why it's important, to take a moment, to stop, and honor what we have. We've all faced hard times, Cole. But in those moments we find strength. And it's that strength that we give thanks for. It's a reminder that we are all connected no matter how far apart we may feel. Cole didn't know how to respond to that. He had never thought about Christmas in that way, never considered that there could be more to it than just a day off work. But something about Ayana's words made him wonder if there was more to life than just getting by. I'll think about it, he said quietly. Ayana nodded, accepting his answer without judgment. That's all I can ask. Remember, my people will be gathering in the valley. If you come, we will welcome you as one of us. With that, Ayana mounted her horse, and Cole watched her ride off into the distance, her figure fading into the desert. For a long moment he stood in the doorway, staring after her. The wind kicked up around him, and the silence of the land seemed to press in on him. He turned back into the cabin and sat at the small table. His mind was filled with thoughts that were unfamiliar, thoughts about things he hadn't cared about before. Community, connection, tradition. He had always been alone, always convinced that he had no need for others. But now, with Ayana's words echoing in his mind, he wasn't so sure. As the day wore on, Cole couldn't shake the feeling that he had missed something important. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow across the desert. He should have been working, fixing fences or tending to the cattle, but instead, he found himself standing at the edge of his porch, looking out toward the valley where Ayana had gone. He wasn't sure why, but he found himself longing for something he couldn't name. He had lived so long in isolation, pushing away any thought of celebration or family, but now, for the first time, he felt a deep emptiness, a yearning for something he had never allowed himself to feel. That evening, as the fire crackled in the hearth, Cole sat in silence. He thought about Ayana's offer, about the Christmas gathering she had invited him to. He wasn't sure if he would go, after all. What did he have in common with those people? But the more he thought about it, the more he felt something pull at him. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to see what they were all about. He thought about how different Ayana seemed, how peaceful and centered she was, how she seemed to move with a sense of purpose, even in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. Maybe there was something to her way of life, something he could learn from. That night, Cole found himself tossing and turning in his bed. He couldn't sleep and his thoughts raced. The words Ayanna had said to him kept playing over and over in his mind. We give thanks not because things are perfect, but because they are what they are. What did that really mean? He turned over, staring up at the ceiling. He had always fought against the world, thinking that the only way to survive was to push through it, to keep his emotions buried deep inside. But now, he wondered if he had been wrong all along. The next morning, Cole woke with the sun. He had made up his mind. He wouldn't let his pride stop him. He had been offered something that might help him see the world in a different way. Maybe it was time to stop living in isolation and start opening up to something greater than himself. He saddled his horse and set off toward the valley where Ayanna had gone. It was a long ride, but the journey felt different this time. It wasn't about getting to his destination. It was about the journey itself, about what he might find along the way. As Cole rode through the desert, the wind in his face and the sun at his back, he began to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, Christmas wasn't about the things he had rejected all these years. Maybe it was about something deeper, something sacred. And maybe, for the first time in a long while, he was ready to find out what that really meant. Cole's journey through the desert felt different than any other he had taken. The sun was low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the landscape as he rode. For once he wasn't focused on the miles he had to travel or the work waiting for him. Instead, his thoughts were filled with Ayanna's words. As he rode, he thought about the tradition she had spoken of. He had always thought of Christmas as just a day to get through, another holiday full of expectations and noise. But now, something inside him was changing. What if there was more to it than he had ever imagined? What if there was something worth celebrating? The ride took him through a narrow valley, the land stretching out before him in a vast expanse. The silence was almost overwhelming, yet it felt peaceful, comforting even. Cole had never spent time in a place like this before. It was as if the land itself held a quiet wisdom, and he could feel its presence with every step his horse took. It was late in the afternoon when he finally reached the Apache settlement. The community was nestled in a small valley, surrounded by rugged cliffs and tall pines. As he approached, he saw smoke rising from several small fires, the scent of cooking food mingling with the crisp, cool air. People were gathered around, talking quietly, moving with a sense of purpose. Cole's heart raced. He felt out of place, unsure of what to expect. His mind flashed back to the many times he had turned away from others, convinced that he didn't need anyone. But now, standing at the edge of the gathering, he felt a deep sense of nervousness, a feeling of not belonging. Ayanna spotted him from across the camp. She was standing near the fire, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. Her eyes met his, and she smiled softly, walking toward him with the same calm energy that had drawn him to her in the first place. "You came," she said simply, as though it was no surprise. Her voice was warm, but her gaze held a quiet strength. "I didn't know what to expect," Cole admitted, still feeling awkward. "I've never been to anything like this before." "You don't have to know everything," Ayanna replied. "Just come and be with us. That's all we ask." She led him to the center of the camp where a circle of people had gathered. The air was filled with the soft hum of quiet conversation and the occasional laughter of children. Ayanna introduced him to a few of the people, and they greeted him with kindness. But there was no rush, no pressure. Everyone seemed to move in harmony, as if they were all part of a greater whole. As the night grew darker, the gathering became more solemn. Ayanna led Cole to a place near the fire, where others were sitting in a circle. In the center of the circle, a small wooden table was set with offerings of food, herbs, and symbols of the earth. Ayanna explained that this was the heart of their Christmas celebration. "This is not just a time for food and gifts," she said. "It's a time to honor the sacredness of life. It's about giving thanks for everything that sustains us, for the earth, the sky, and each other." Cole listened quietly, feeling the weight of her words. He watched as others in the circle closed their eyes, offering silent prayers. The fire crackled and popped in the background, but there was a stillness in the air, a quiet reverence that Cole had never experienced before. This wasn't about rushing through a holiday to get to the next thing. This was about slowing down, taking time to recognize what truly mattered. When the prayers were finished, the food was passed around and Cole ate with the others. It wasn't extravagant, but it didn't need to be. The meal was simple, hearty, and filled with warmth. As he ate, he couldn't help but notice how connected everyone seemed, how they moved in unison, without words. There was no rush, no hurry, just a shared understanding that this moment, this gathering, was sacred. Cole had never felt like he belonged to something like this. He had always thought that life was about survival, about getting by, But here, among these people, he realized that survival alone was not enough. Life needed more than that. It needed connection, it needed gratitude, it needed moments like this one where people came together to honor what they had and what they had lost. As the evening wore on, Cole found himself feeling something he hadn't felt in years: peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that came from being alone, from shutting everything out. It was a peace that came from being part of something greater than himself, something that wasn't about possessions or achievements. It was about living in harmony with the world around him. Ayanna sat beside him, her presence steady and calm. She seemed to sense what he was feeling, and for the first time, she didn't need to say anything. They simply sat together, watching the flames dance in the fire. Eventually, the circle began to break, and people stood to leave. Ayanna looked at Cole, her expression soft. "Did you feel it?" she asked. "I think I did," Cole said quietly. "I've never been part of something like this before. It's different." Ayanna nodded. "It's the heart of what Christmas truly is, honoring life, giving thanks, and sharing that love with others. It's not about the things we buy or the things we give. It's about the connections we make, the sacredness of the moments we share." The next morning, Cole woke to the sound of birds singing in the trees and the soft murmur of voices from outside. The air was cool, but the sun was rising, casting a golden light over the valley. As he stepped outside, he saw the people of the community gathered around the fire, preparing for the day ahead. Ayanna was sitting with some of the elders, speaking quietly with them in her native language. She looked up when she saw Cole, and her face broke into a smile. "I'm glad you stayed," she said. Cole nodded, feeling a sense of calm that had been missing from his life for so long. "I'm glad I came," he said. "I never thought Christmas could mean something like this." Ayanna stood and walked over to him, her expression gentle. "It's not about the holiday, Cole. It's about what's inside us, the way we choose to live, the way we choose to honor the world around us." They were laughing, talking, and sharing stories. There was no hurry, no sense of rushing. It was as if time itself had slowed down, and everything in this moment was exactly as it was meant to be. "I think I understand now," Cole said. "It's not about being alone. It's about being with others, sharing what we have, and finding meaning in the small things." Ayanna smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "Exactly. Life isn't just about surviving. It's about living." As the morning passed, Cole found himself becoming more a part of the community. He helped with the cooking, shared in the laughter, and listened to the stories that were told around the fire. He realized that this was what he had been missing all along, the simple, quiet connection that comes from sharing life with others. As the day came to a close, Cole stood at the edge of the settlement, looking out over the land. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. For the first time in years, he felt at peace with himself, with his place in the world. Ayanna walked up beside him, her presence as steady as the land itself. "Are you ready to go home?" she asked. Cole nodded, a small smile on his face. "I think I have a better idea of what home is now." With that, he turned and walked back to his cabin, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. He knew that his life would never be the same. Christmas wasn't just a day. It was a way of living, a way of giving thanks, honoring the sacred, and sharing life with others. And for the first time, Cole was ready to embrace that.